journey through art history takes us to France at the beginning of the 19th century. In France, Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque are developing a new art style called Cubism. Cubism goes against the traditional style of art at the time. Cubism was a new way of painting that did not follow the traditional style of painting using perspective that had been utilized since the early Renaissance. Perspective was a way of making a two-dimensional surface represent a three-dimensional object or space from a single point of view, like a snapshot. Cubist painters felt that using perspective was limiting their progression of capturing reality. They did not want to detract from the two-dimensionality of the canvas and wanted to show their subjects relative to what they saw of the whole object. This followed the idea of how people scan an object with their eyes, stopping and focusing on details, and then moving around the object so they can see it in its entirety. Using this idea, they created pieces of work that followed a method of looking at the subject matter from multiple perspectives, and using selections from these different views to construct a composition on the two-dimensional surface of their canvas. They proposed that the sight of an object was a combination of these different views. A typical Cubist painting shows real subjects and spaces, but are parts from different viewpoints reconstructed into a composition of planes, forms, and colors. Analytic Cubism was invented by Picasso and Braque during the winter of 1909 and 1910, and lasted till 1912. Analytic comes from the idea of analyzing objects and spaces to come up with the basic geometric parts and then depict these three-dimensional parts on a two-dimensional surface. Colors in these paintings were drastically subdued and were nearly monochromatic. Here is an example of analytic cubism. This is a violin and palette, 1909-1910, by Georges Braque, which shows objects that are still recognizable, but they are fractured into multiple planes as well as the space around them. In the image you can see the violin, sheets of music, and the artist's palette, but they are seen from multiple perspectives, broken into geometric shapes that come together to create the whole. Another example of analytic cubism is Pablo Picasso's The Guitar Player, 1910. This work shows how Cubists abstracted their subjects, breaking them down into their most basic geometric form. This work still shows different planes depicting different viewpoints of the subject matter. Synthetic Cubism was born from Analytic Cubism when Picasso and Braque went a step further and started taking real-world elements like the one from Picasso's still life with chair caning, where he took a piece of oilcloth that would have been used normally as a table cover by the working class in their kitchens, printed with an illusionistic chair caning pattern, and glued it into his painting. This essentially was the first use of collage in fine arts. Braque also was using pieces of materials to create works as we see in his fruit dish in glass, where he used pieces of wallpaper to create the collage. Braque also used sand and sawdust in his paintings to create a textural element. Cubism also was the first abstract style of modern art, and influenced many other styles including Orphism, Futurism, Constructivism, and Expressionism. Continue your journey by finding works of Cubism or by going to the next location for another art form.